بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. Yeah, sorry. I'm trying, man. I'm trying the best that I can. So I didn't lose my voice. It's just I have trouble projecting. I have a lot of people complain about my volume. But did we have any questions from last time that we hadn't gotten to? This is Iḥyā Ulūm al-Dīn. Yeah. So Iḥyā Ulūm al-Dīn. The camera is on. Yes, sir. Yeah, I don't. If you know, like the people who are online, it makes them feel like they're in the classroom. You know what I mean? I try. You know, I try. So basically, with the issue with Iḥyā, and we had mentioned this before, is that there's one translation. The one who translated, he claims it's complete, but it's not. He actually just took major sections of it and he translated it. I think there's a, just look up Iḥyā Ulūm al-Dīn and see what's available. Because the thing is, the first two books that we did, so we did Ajaib al-Qalb, which was Marvels of the Heart. That's been translated. It was a PhD thesis. The second one we did with Riyadh al-Nafs, or Disciplining the Soul. That's been translated. And then after that, we did Kasr al-Shahwatain, Breaking the Two Desires. These three books have been translated, and we completed them. What we're doing now is Afat al-Lisan, which is faults of the heart, faults of the tongue. This hasn't been translated. Not even like the old school Pakistani translation? The old school Pakistani one is not. No, that's the one I'm talking about. It's not. It's actually not complete. If you actually compare it to the Arabic, you can see that there's major gaps in the translation of what he didn't do. So I don't know if he took a mukhtasar of Iḥyā and he translated that saying that this is Iḥyā Ulūm al-Dīn. Yeah, I don't know. There are a few scholars that actually summarized it. So one of them, Ibn al-Jawzi, he summarized it. That hasn't been translated. And then there's another summarization by Ibn Qudama called Mukhtasar Minhaj al-Qasidin. So you have Iḥyā Ulūm al-Dīn, Minhaj al-Qasidin by Ibn al-Jawzi, who it was a summary of that. And then there's another one that's called Mukhtasar Minhaj al-Qasidin by Ibn Qudama. I think that's been translated, this last one. And there's sections of Iḥyā. But those sections, I think there's a publishing house that's working on trying to translate all of the different sections. I don't know how far along they are and how far they've gotten. What's the name of what we're doing now? This is Afat al-Lisan. It's faults of the tongue. So this section hasn't been translated. So you guys are honored to have the first English presentation of the book. Yeah. Was it anything from last time that I forgot, man. We were talking about solution. Oh, we were talking about certain solutions or solutions that we have when knowing why we're backbiting and how to stop backbiting, reasons that we fall into backbiting. So what are some reasons that we fall into backbiting? Not knowing the reasons that we fall into backbiting.
No, so like not knowing the situation and discussing it with other people versus discussing it with maybe the person that might be.
So what exactly do you not know in that situation?
So like what the reason could be that someone else is saying.
I'm sorry? No, I'm just asking. Like, so what are some reasons that would push any of us to backbite? Right? If I dislike the person, for sure. Arrogance. We had spoken about that. Inferiority complex. This is another one that we had mentioned before, right? Anger. Jealousy. Yes, for sure. These are all reasons. These are all very valid reasons. I think we had the summary. We had said that there are 11 reasons. Where are they? These are all examples. How far back was this? Oh, there we go. These are the 11 reasons. So over here, repressing anger. What does that entail? What does that mean? Okay, and we had talked about that. What the relationship of emotion, like so in Islam, how is a Muslim supposed to deal with their emotion? Anger, happiness, sadness. With prayer. So if I'm angry, I should pray. Okay, so I think that's the first step. The first step is what? Acknowledging, right? You have to acknowledge that feeling. You have to acknowledge that emotion, whatever the case might be. And it's very important also to embrace the emotion. If I'm angry, I should recognize and embrace the fact that I'm angry. Or if I'm sad, I should recognize and embrace the fact that I'm sad, I'm happy, etc. Why? If I don't, then what happens? It spills out on others. So this is what is called misdirected anger. If I keep suppressing those particular emotions, or if I keep suppressing my anger, what's going to happen is going to come out in a way, in a style that I don't want, and someone is going to end up getting hurt. And this is not permissible. This is not permissible. Just because I cannot show emotional control doesn't give me now a license to hurt others. That's completely inappropriate. Social pressure, like what? Right, so you're sitting in a circle, everybody is backbiting, so you feel pressured to also join in. Inferiority complex. Why would you backbite if you have an inferiority complex? I'm sorry? Okay. Okay. Also, when I have an inferiority complex, how do I view the world? Right, everybody's against me. So before they get to me, what do I want to do? I want to get to them first. You know, it's like a preemptive strike. Basically, because I have this inferiority complex, I'm going to lash out against others because of how I feel about myself. Scapegoating. What's that? No idea. That's a fair answer. Right, to justify. It's basically using someone else as a justification for the bad thing that I'm doing. And what have I done to the other person? Or I've backbit them by exposing whatever it was that they're doing, right? It's not necessary that other people knew that he was doing this or he was doing that. You know, if I'm caught lying, I'll be like, well, you know, so-and-so lies. I automatically have backbit, and I've tried to lessen and redirect the attention from myself. Boasting. I'm sorry about the table setup, guys. I promise I didn't do it. The social experiment was. It's actually really interesting because nobody asked if we could change the setup. Everybody just assumed, and they came and they sat down. Because I already know nobody's going to want to sit here. Why? Because we combined the prayers and we came in here. So boasting. When we boast, what happens is that we can exaggerate very often. It becomes very easy to backbite others. Jealousy, you guys had already mentioned, because I am jealous of someone, I want to take away whatever ni'am or whatever blessing that person has. Joking and insulting, sometimes they can cross over. What did we say the difference between joking and insulting was? Joking and insulting. Insulting is intentional, right? Your goal is to actually hurt the person. Joking, you might not intend to hurt that individual. And we said here, there are three that apply to the clergy. Exaggerating, in what way? right? Making something bigger than it is, like making a sin bigger than it is, and then applying it to an individual. Pity. We said that pity was a major problem. Why? What happens? Use that excuse to what? To right? Yeah, to talk about people like, oh, Miskeen, he has a drinking problem. You know, and it's not fair, right? There's no reason to talk about that person and to expose like, you know, the issue or the problem that he or she is having. And religious anger, you know, getting angry, pretending, or I won't say pretending, but an individual might actually get angry for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But while doing that, he'll actually expose somebody who has fallen into that thing that he hates. And all we have to do to avoid any of these things is, well, these three specifically, what do I need to do? What is the simple thing I need to avoid? Avoid clergy. Oof. Oh, that's a tough one. That's harsh. Yarhamukallah. Just avoid the name. Don't say their name. That's it. That's all you have to do. The rest of these, it requires a little bit more therapy, right? Because there are other issues that are going on here. Here, the problem is that you have a religious gown that is being used to cover these things. So, but these require a little bit more time, right? There are layers of problems that need to be addressed in those things, versus these, which it seems it's pretty straightforward on what the issue is and what the problem is. Like, you know, they're using this religious front to justify the backbiting, but if they were sincere, all they had to do was not take the individual's name. Then. Yeah, I think we mentioned examples of these. We talked about how to recognize some of them. We talked about how to deal with them and how there are different strategies for each of them. He mentioned some spiritual strategies in order to help us deal with those things. And then we also spoke about what? I think that was it. So prohibition of backbiting in the heart. Why is this a unique discussion? Yeah. What does that mean? I think that's a good question. When Ghazāli is talking about backbiting in the heart, what does he mean? Okay, judging might be part of it. Jealousy might be part of it. But what? Actually talking about that person to myself. So how can he say this is something prohibited? How can he say it's haram? Or is it justified? Or number one, is it justified or not? Just if we take it on this apparent value, if I feel a certain way about some, or here, forget that. I'll be very clear. I'm backbiting someone to myself. But this is what I'm thinking. I'm thinking, man, so and so stupid, right? Huh? I'm sorry. That's fine. But I'm asking, how is he saying? Like, is it okay to call it a sin or not? Yes. So this is the problem. So here she's making a very good point. I thought the things you don't express, you're not supposed to be what? Held accountable for. Yes.
I'm not sure, but is there a
It's okay.
correlation between this and like giving excuses for others?
There can be. But here, very specifically, how is he going to say that if I'm doing something, if I'm talking to myself, how can that thing be prohibited? When we're not held accountable for our thoughts? Yes.
Ghazāli's opinion is preemptive, so that the person does not go beyond
Okay.
his mind, beyond it.
Sure.
So,
So
there is next
he-
big mind to him.
yeah. So basically, you're saying that this is a preemptive prohibition, like what we call like a preventative measure or sadd al-dhari'a, so that he doesn't fall into it.
And if the person is fighting his thoughts,
Uh-huh.
as far as I heard and understood,
Sure.
it's not safe. As far as he's
No, absolutely. Like you know, if I'm jealous and I'm fighting that feeling of jealousy, what's going to happen?
there's no sin. You're putting your efforts.
Not just there's no sin. There's what?
Oh, the reward.
There's a reward, right? I'm making an active effort to suppress a particular feeling or to suppress a bad intention or bad will or ill will towards someone. Yes.
The implication concept of like homosexuality is
Oh. Mhm. Sure. So this is a very good point, and it's very similar and very much in vein to what the sister had mentioned. If I have certain feelings, if I don't act on those feelings, in general, we understand that if I don't act on ill will or I don't act on evil feelings, I'm what? Not just I'm not accountable, but I'm what? I'm rewarded. But over here, he's saying it doesn't matter if you have that feeling, because when you say something is a prohibition, it is haram. And for the usul students, when something is haram, what does that mean? You're actually held accountable. It's a sin. So I think it's important to understand what it is that he's saying and the point that he's trying to make. So he says here, as having ill thoughts about another is haram, so are statements about them. And he's going to explain this. And he said, just about as speaking about others with your tongue is haram, so is speaking ill about your brother to yourself. Do you guys see the connections that he's making here? Are there any holes here? You guys want to challenge Ghazāli? Bring it. So the verbalize. Okay, what things here do you guys agree are haram? So there are 4 things that are happening, right? Over here, ill thoughts, ill statements to others, and to myself. So which ones here are clearly haram, or which ones here can we agree on are haram? Statements? Okay, so here and here you guys are agreeing on are haram. Okay, what about this one? Ill thoughts? No? Far-fetched? It depends. Oh, Wait, are you claiming nuance? Okay. So over here, Nazim is saying that there's some nuance to this. Is it all ill thoughts? Is it some ill thoughts? Are there certain types of ill thoughts? Yes.
Is Ghazāli thinking that these thoughts have manifestation in your spiritual health or something like that?
We haven't even gotten there. All I know is that he's saying just the thoughts in and of themselves. And here, let me ask another question. Are there thoughts that we are held accountable for?
I think it's recorded.
I think it would depend how the thought, are we ruminating on the thought? Because if we are, then there could be, I guess,
You're kind of feeding yourself.
yes, then
And-
you could do that. Like you can intentionally
Sure.
like try to
Yeah.
ponder, as opposed to a thought that just comes
Like a passing thought.
involuntarily
Sure.
in your thought.
So there are definitely involuntarily passing thoughts that do happen, but kind of feeding that,
Yes, you can
feeding that idea
Yeah.
and kind of letting it grow. I think that has to do a little bit with something what Nazim was talking about in terms of, all right, if this is something that is pushing you to act, then that's where it becomes problematic. I don't know. Let's go a little bit deeper. And we all agreed what? That we are what in terms of our thoughts? No, we're not. Right? And this is, we all understand this. I think it's pretty clear if we were held accountable for what we thought. I mean, I know I'd be in trouble at least, but like it is extremely problematic. So things like in what you guys had talked about, passing thoughts, talking to yourself through an issue, or even doubt about another. These are things, these are actually forgivable and overlooked offenses. These aren't problematic in and of themselves. Versus dhann. And why does he use dhann specifically? فَإِنَّ بَعْضَ dhann إِثْمٍ. Right? And what does he say dhann is? How does he define it? It's like this is something that just strokes the ego and you actually enjoy it. You revel in it. So what is the action that's being done here? Or is there an action or no? Think about it. It's not just the thought by itself, but there's an element of what? Enjoyment. And that's something it really stands out. So over here he uses this. يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا اجْتَنِبُوا كَثِيرًا مِنَ الظَّنِّ إِنَّ بَعْضَ الظَّنِّ إِثْمٌ. That believers avoid making too many assumptions. Some assumptions are sinful. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the word ijtinab. Ijtanibu. Where else do we see this word? Zina. Yeah. Zina, drinking alcohol, gambling. It's the same word, same term. that absolutely stay away from assumptions. What is so evil about assumptions versus passing thoughts? I'm sorry? I didn't hear you. Okay.
The level of conviction.
Right. There's a level of conviction that's personally there, but also the level of what? Right. There's a self-satisfaction that there, and there's a level of investment too. Right. When I'm assuming things about someone, what am I doing? Right. I'm developing a sense of confidence around this idea. And what is this idea built on? Nothing, right? It's not built on anything. But I'm reinforcing this idea. There's an active involvement with me and this idea. And that's what an assumption is. But not just that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, "Ijtanibu kathiran min adh-dhann," that avoid making too many assumptions, or avoid having too much suspicion. Is there a certain type of assumption or suspicion that would be allowed? So if we looked at this on a spectrum, are there elements of dhann or elements of suspicion or elements of assumption that would be allowed Islamically? What do you guys think? Yeah, there was. I'm sorry? Okay, if it was reasonable. And how do I determine what's reasonable or not? We'll talk about some of those cases, inshallah. But there are elements to it that do apply, because it's not possible that I do not have assumptions about anybody. If somebody's showing a pattern of behavior, it's going to be safe for me to assume what? That's going to be consistent. And this applies to many things in our life. If somebody is abusive consistently, should I have good thoughts about him not being abusive the 10th time or the 11th or the 12th or the 13th? No, right? That's not how that works. Why? Because I have precedence. Like, I have actual ground. I have actual basis to make that claim and to make that assumption. So why are assumptions haram? So he says the reality of the heart is unknown, like the true reality of the heart. What a person is thinking, what he's believing, it's unknown. So only the one that knows the unseen understands that reality. He also said it's also impermissible to assume unless one has witnessed it themselves. Eyewitness's account is something that he puts as a condition. And the second thing he puts is that he has no reasonable explanation. So even if I see it, there has to be no other explanation for what I saw. These are the two conditions he puts forward, and we'll talk about cases where this actually applies. I think some of the examples are slightly extreme, but we'll talk about them. So here, basically, what does this entail, and what are these conditions, and how do we apply these? That he can't take secondhand accounts. If somebody comes and tells me about that person, I have to reject that account. Why? Because I didn't actually see him do it. I didn't witness him do it. And he said, because basically and this goes to a lot of like the theological discussion that Ghazāli has and how he deals with the physical world. He says that the physical world, what I am supposed to trust is what my five senses tell me. So the information that my five senses are giving me, that is the information I trust. Any other information is taken with a grain of salt. I have to doubt it.
I mean,
Why?
but I don't think this is like accurate, right?
Sure.
If you can have somebody's opinion about something you can rely on, like, for example, you want to get married to somebody.
Sure.
You ask somebody that knows the person, hey, like, what kind of
Yeah.
person is she? And then that's legitimate.
Okay.
That's getting the second-hand opinion.
Sure.
You can rely on it. If it's
So-
like a trustworthy individual.
So over here, he's just talking about, he's in general, if we look at this very superficially, he's talking about strangers. Right? So if somebody who you don't know comes and tells you something about someone, if I don't trust that piece of information, am I saying anything about who's bringing it? Am I claiming this person is a liar now? No. What am I treating him as? Somebody unknown. Somebody who's unknown. Yes. Sure. Because you're constantly suspicious of others, and it definitely can lead to that. But the question then comes in here. In general, I as a Muslim should treat others as what? As trustworthy. Should I trust every person I come across?
No.
Should I distrust everyone I come across? No. I treat them as strangers. I treat them as unknown. And when I treat others as unknown, that means that I'm giving them an opportunity. I'm giving them a chance. And that's where we have to be, right? When it comes to being merciful and being understanding, you guys know one of the biggest mistakes new Muslims make when they come to Islam? Yeah, they equate Islam to Muslims, and what happens when they do that? They trust everyone. They're like, oh, but he's Muslim. It's like, hey, this guy has a car. Like, he's a car salesman, but he's Muslim. Let me go trust him. You know what I mean? Or this person is involved in this. Like, oh, well, but he's Muslim. And what happens is like there's just this huge disconnect. Right? There's this huge disconnect now, because now what I've done is I've fallen into the other extreme. I'm trusting everyone just based on that particular identity. But if we treat everyone, again, why do I lock my doors in my house? Is it because I distrust society? I don't want my cat. I don't. But she's already ran away a few times now. Notice how I said a few times. It's like meaning she's come back. So, but why do I lock my front door then? If I don't distrust this, if I'm telling you guys like, hey, don't distrust society, why am I locking my front door then? Okay, precaution. Because I don't know anyone. I don't know anyone, and not just that. Why should I put somebody else in fitna? Why should I test someone else? Is that fair? Like, if I just put like $100 bill here and I walk away. I'm sorry?
Please do.
Please. No, and then it's gone. Who am I to blame? The person who took. I mean, myself. Right? It's like, everybody's waiting for it, right? It's like, is he going to do it, right? But yeah, I should blame myself. Why? Because I am not allowed to test other people. It's Allah's job to test others. I'm not here to test others, and that's not fair. And we will find with ourselves when people test us, right? When we know sometimes people are asking questions just to see where we stand on a particular issue, or just to see if we're friends with someone, or just to see where we work, or just to see how much money we make. How do we like when we're being tested? No, nobody likes being tested. It's actually a means of distrust, because that person is trying to find out information in a very underhanded way, right? In general, we don't trust that. This is not something that we praise. It's not something that we look forward to. And those are actually the type of people we try to avoid. But Allah protect us. So when it comes to dealing with the secondhand accounts, here he's just talking about strangers in general. He's not talking about people who you trust. If a trustworthy, and why do I say that? Because he actually gets to that point. He talks about how to deal with information from people who I trust. Like, how do I deal with that? At what point do I stop making excuses? Because there has to be a limit. I can't just constantly make excuses for someone who's taken advantage of me, someone who's hurt me, someone, you know what I mean? Someone who's only calling me when they need something from me, which is not always bad, right? Because that shows that that person still relies on you and cares for you, you know? Like if I'm constantly calling my neighbor to watch my kids, you know what I mean? Like, it shows that I trust him, right? Allahu Akbar. Trust him with my kids. Or I really like going out. One of the two, right? So again, what does he say? He says, "Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu in ja'akum fasiq binaba'in fatabayyanu an tusibu qawman bijahala fatusbihu ala ma fa'altum nadimin." That believers, if a troublemaker brings you news, check it first in case you wrong others unwittingly and later regret what you have done. What is he telling? What is Ghazāli telling us here? Right. So over here, if we look at the apparent verse, he's talking about a fasiq, right? He's talking about a troublemaker. If a troublemaker brings you a piece of information, if a troublemaker brings you news, then check it first. Does this mean that if somebody trustworthy brings me news, I shouldn't check it? This is called what? Incongruent analogy, right? Mafhum mukhalafa. Or should I still check it?
The degree of diligence.
Right. So the degree of diligence changes. That's for sure, and I definitely do agree with that. So here, I have this news, and I know this person is a fasiq, I have to reject it. And he uses this to say, this is why it's impermissible to believe Iblis. Meaning that if somebody comes with me with a piece of false information, then that is the same as Iblis bringing me information. And anything Iblis brings me, I automatically have to reject it. Yes.
So I was immediately, like, when you were saying what constitutes if someone's like being invalid, I was immediately going to say something similar to that, or that's what I was thinking, but then from the slide before that one, it said, like, only, like, do I have to decide this person's troublemaker, or if they have a public reputation of being the type of person?
Sure.
When is
So if
from my
I,
own sense the person's
so
troublemaker?
if I decide, and let's take both into account. If I decide Ahmed is a troublemaker, how should I deal with the piece of information that he brings me? Should I dismiss it? I take it with a grain of salt, right? But I can't automatically dismiss it. Why? Because I'm the only person that feels that Ahmed's a troublemaker. Like, but what if everybody, like every time I ask someone in the community, like, hey, you guys know Ahmed? Yeah, bro, don't even, like, he's going to lie through his teeth, you know. And this is what people are telling me about him. Now I have a right every time he tells me something to what? To dismiss it. Now I can dismiss it. So this is the example he gives, and I was like, wow, this is like really creative. I would never have thought of this. Is it, what if I smell alcohol in somebody's breath? What if I smell alcohol in someone? He's like, well, it's possible he rinsed his mouth out, realized it was alcohol, and spit it out. I was like, wow, that's pretty serious. He said, or the second possibility is that he was forced to drink. I mean, that's some husnul dhan. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't think I'm there. Yeah.
Even if you see a person shaking, you still give him the
No, you give him the benefit of the doubt. You give him the benefit of the doubt for sure. And the thing is, you do the best you can. You do the best you can. So, for example, and I think this might be a more practical example. If I see somebody swaying when they're walking, what are some excuses or practical excuses or reasonable excuses that would come to mind? Huh? I'm sorry, they're hurt, they're tired, right? And they're oh wow. I don't know if that's good or bad, or they're clumsy. I mean, I guess it's better than drinking. Huh? Maybe they're on some type of medication. So do you guys understand like how to reasonably come up with excuses? Like as long as they're within the realm of possibility and the realm of reality, coming up with those excuses is very reasonable. I think this one's kind of tough, right? Like that one you're starting to get like really draw the line at that point. But I guess that's the reason that he brought it. You know, he brought an extreme example to show even in these extreme examples, I can come up with excuses. And there's still a reasonable probability and a logical possibility of these excuses actually happening. Yes. Yes.
Not permissible to believe it.
Yeah.
How does that manifest? Is that like,
So basically what he's saying is that if you have an evil person who brings you a piece of news, it's equivalent to Iblis bringing you news.
that level?
Yeah.
I mean, let's assume not quite at that level, though, right? I mean, it's a bit much.
I like here. I think it's a bit much? Yeah. You know what I mean? But it depends. It depends. So if this person, is there something going on? Am I missing something? So if somebody is lying on somebody else and backbiting someone else, like, is that inspired by Iblis? Yeah, for sure. Does that make sense? If somebody comes to you and be like, hey, so-and-so, he's talking about you and like, you know, he's this and that and da-da-da-da, and that's clearly inspired by Iblis. Yes.
I believe it's a hadith or something that when the text says they are shayateen from the jinn and shayateen from the ins.
Yeah.
From human mankind.
Yeah.
We could do, yes.
I mean, yeah. So if he's like a shaitan, because he's acting like a shaitan, like a person who's doing this thing, because one of the evilest deeds is actually backbiting. Like, it's one of the most evil things a person can do. But you were gonna say something, Faisal?
So like someone's going to instigate, you're saying like that person gets inspired by it.
He doesn't even have to instigate. He can just come and talk ill about another person. Do you feel that's divinely inspired? No, I mean that's just evil. They're like, what purpose do I have of talking about, what right do I have speaking about anyone else? Like, what gave me that pass? What allowed me to do that? It can only be the shaitan who pressured me or pushed me to do that. Or someone who's just inherently evil, you know, like where it's just part of their day-to-day. Yes. It depends. It depends. And we'll talk about there are spaces and there are reasons where ghibah is permissible, where backbiting is permissible. And it depends on the reason that I'm asking. Like if I'm asking just to ask, no, that's not. That's going to be backbiting. So how do I recognize if I fall into assumption? By looking for the signs of assumption, by looking for the signs of dhann. And you know, what are some of those signs? He says, when your heart from within changes toward that person. I don't have any information. I don't have any news about this person. Nobody's told me about this person, but I have assumed this about him. And after that assumption, my feelings change toward it. This is a sign of dhann. If I lose interest in that person. I don't care what happens to them. I don't care what they're doing. I don't care what's going on in their life, right? This is dhann. I'm generally unconcerned with this person. I don't show any kindness toward them. If he falls into evil, I don't really care. This just shows how, and all of this is baseless, right? There's no base for me to actually feel this way. I've created this feeling, and because of this feeling, I've acted on it in this way, and I've manifested it in this way. Why? And the shaitan tells you, he's like, no, man, you have some insight about this person. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you insight. Like you can see the evil that this person is about to do. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made you intelligent. Like you can see things before other people can see them. Just watch, just give it a little bit of time. It's going to manifest. Whatever it is that you're feeling, there's some truth to it. And this is always a good one. Allah enlightened me. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given me the ability now to differentiate between people. And now I have this ability and I feel this about this person. Huh? Allahu Akbar. And it's just shaitan's pride. It's just our pride. It's just shaitan's darkness. It has nothing to do with Allah's light. It's the complete opposite. It's the complete opposite. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. So what if I fall into it? What if I feel myself making these assumptions? Right? I'm making these assumptions about the people who are around me. What do I do? How do I protect myself? How do I prevent myself from doing that? Just do the opposite. So all those feelings that we were talking about, I have to act on the opposite of those feelings. So how do I do the opposite? Remember we said there's going to be in the heart and there's going to be in the limbs. In the heart, I remove that unbearableness in my heart. Like I have to actively work to remove that feeling from my heart. Because why is it so easy? Because I'm the one that what? I'm the one that developed it. I'm the one that placed it there, right? I placed it there in the first place. And because I placed it, I also have the ability to remove it. Remove that hate or whatever it is that I have in my heart. And then by actions. And whatever it is, the opposite of what the shaitan is telling you to do. So if the shaitan is telling you to avoid that person, what should you do? Go and meet them. If the shaitan is telling you to talk down to that person, praise that person. If the shaitan is telling you, to hurt that person in different ways, do an act of kindness, right? Just do the opposite of whatever it is that you are feeling or that you're pushing yourself to do. So this is one of the questions that you guys had. What if it's somebody who's trustworthy who's coming to tell me, right? Somebody tells me about this person is doing X, Y, Z. How do I deal with that scenario? If I believe him, I'm excused. Why? Because the person he's trustworthy. There's no reason for me to assume, or there's no reason for me to believe that he is lying. And because if I don't believe him, it's actually an accusation against him. Because he's trustworthy. He's already established his trust. He's already established his trust. And by me doubting that, I have now actually accused him of falling into or doing the opposite.
So this is of course like assuming a trustworthy person has a legitimate reason to be telling. Because
And we'll talk about that too.
okay, otherwise that could be backbiting too.
Yeah. No. So in the subhanAllah, it's amazing how by avoiding one thing, you fall into assumption of the other. So instead of assuming about the other person, you fall into assuming about the person who's actually bringing you the news. So someone might come to tell you like, hey, listen, this person is actually planning to hurt you, right? This person is planning to take money from you. This person is planning to do X, Y, Z to you. And I want you to know because I want you to stay safe and I want you to stay protected. And now he's an honest person. I should what? I should believe him, right? There's no reason for me to accuse him. There's no reason for me to doubt him. So I should take those extra steps and I should take those extra precautions. Does this mean that there could have been a misunderstanding from his part? So, right, possibly, right? That possibility always exists. And everything needs to be explored, and this has to do with what Abdul Razak had mentioned. I need to look at the nature of the relationship of the person bringing the news to the one who he's speaking about. What if they're known enemies? What if they're known to have a bad relationship? What if it's known that this person took advantage of this person and now he bears a grudge toward him? All right, these things happen. I mean, this is the nature of relationships. Just because a person is trustworthy, it doesn't mean that he can be honest with every single situation. There are going to be situations where he flounders. There are going to be situations where he has faults. So what do we do at that point? If I know the nature of the relationship between these two people, I can now take that information with a grain of salt. Because when I take it with a grain of salt, I'm neither saying that he is telling the truth, nor am I saying that he is lying. If he appears to be honest, this is another issue altogether. So before we are talking about the person who is known to be honest. Superficially, this person is honest, and he brings me a piece of news. It's the same thing. There are some people who do appear to be upright. Allah, Allah. Allah Akbar, Allah. So there are people who do appear to be honest, right? Superficially, if you look at them, when you deal with them, they appear to be honest, but the reality is like they actually enjoy backbiting others and they enjoy talking about others. Such people, when they bring us a piece of information, the moment we find out, we have to reject that statement and we have to reject that testimony because they're actually known to lie. Whenever I think ill of a Muslim, I should make dua for him. Remember we were talking about doing the opposite, and the reason I do this, in addition to pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is this is actually something that would infuriate the shaitan. Shaitan's telling me to do something and I'm doing the complete opposite of it. And the purpose of that is that we hope that it would prevent him from trying that strategy again. It doesn't mean that there aren't going to be other strategies that he tries, but the idea is to try to prevent him from using those same strategies again. and trying to master ourselves and our abilities and our expressions as much as possible. And this is something that's important too. How do we advise people? And we said that one of the first step to advice is what? Relationship, right? Developing a relationship. And advising him in private is something that you'll hear throughout the Sunnah. You'll hear a lot of the companions, et cetera, the scholars talking about it. And that's essentially what it is. By taking him in private, I'm trying to develop and build a relationship with this person. And if I find out something about him, going and telling him, hey, listen, I heard this, I heard X, Y, Z, this is wrong. He might try to reject it and say, no, that's not what I said, or that's not what I did, or that's not what happened. What do you do in such a situation? Somebody trustworthy brings you a piece of news and you go and you confront this person saying that, hey, I heard such and such. I just wanted to advise you as a brother that, listen, don't do that. Don't do that. And whatever issues there are, we need to talk about it. He's like, no, man, I never said that. No, you must have misheard. That wasn't me. Yes. That's one possibility, right? Getting somebody to intercede on your behalf, somebody who might have a closer or better relationship with them. What else? There's nothing else I can do.
What's the scenario?
Scenario is that somebody brought you a piece of information that this person intends to, take advantage of you or in some way, like, he's going to try to sell you a car that's a lemon. And you go to the person, you be like, hey, I heard such and such. I didn't appreciate it. And, this isn't the way that you should be dealing with Muslims. May Allah bless you in, your endeavors and stuff like that. But don't do that, man. That's not the way to deal with people. Yeah. No? Okay. And he's like, nah, man, the cars I sell are good. They're solid.
Well, you should not dismiss the incorrect information the person brought to you.
Okay.
You should not completely dismiss it. Maybe that was his misunderstanding. Maybe that was his bias or something. So okay, colors. You just leave.
You could just leave him at that point. So let's use a real scenario. I'm planning on buying a car from so and so. I talked about it. I'm about to go close the deal. Someone comes and tells me like, bro, that car is a piece of junk. Don't buy it. So now I go to meet my Muslim brother to purchase the car from him. And should I confront him? Huh? No, he's Muslim. I trust him.
You didn't sign the contract?
I didn't sign the contract yet.
You can still ask him to prove if this guy is.
Oh, if it's worth it. Get the warranty. Always get the extended warranty. You can bring a mechanic to come and look at it.
You could ask someone else.
I could ask other people. So the thing is, there are a number of strategies in learning how to deal with this so that I don't expose or put him in a situation where he feels exposed. Because the moment I call him out, what's going to happen? Right? He's going to get defensive. And when a person goes on the defensive, it becomes very difficult to converse with them. It becomes very difficult to deal with them. So there has to be a better way. There always has to be a better way. Advising in private, this is something that could happen, within families sometimes, if they're depending on the nature of the relationship. If it's your brother or your sister or, a cousin, you might be able to pull them to the side and have that conversation with them. You might be able to deal with them. But it really depends. It really is. Like this is very tricky. This is very tricky. The art of advice, it's not easy. And the other layer that Ghazāli adds to this, which I really appreciated actually, is to make sure what my intention is when I'm talking to him, when I'm approaching him. Because many times the moment we find out something about someone, we feel good about ourselves and going and talking about them because well, I don't have that problem. And if I'm doing it to do that, then that action, the good that I think I'm going to actually fulfill, I've completely nullified it. I'm not going to benefit from doing that. And so he says, okay, what is the strategy to help deal with that? How do you deal with this problem? How do you deal with this issue of being arrogant or having this pride or having this feeling of trying to one up that person who you're going to approach? He says, like, I should deal with him by putting myself in his shoes, like showing that empathy. And that's something that's really important. By saying that, okay, what if I was the one that fell into that sin? How would I like to be approached about it? Right? If I was suffering from that problem, how would I want to deal with that issue? He also adds, I should love for him to leave the sin himself. Right? It should come to that extent, where I should actually hope that he leaves whatever it is that he's doing himself, and that I would like it more than me having to go talk to him about it. And if I reach that point, then inshallah, that's a step, or that's a sign towards sincerity, and I actually go and I can deal with it directly. He says, and one of the problems with assumption is that it actually leads to spying. Okay, where time is up, I'm sorry. But this is the last thing, I believe. No, it's not. So, yeah, that was an assumption on my part. So anyway, advice is something that's very important. Making sure that our intentions are pure and clear, so that we don't fall into any of these sins is fundamental. But are there any questions before we end? Those of you who haven't prayed Iḥyā, they should be starting Salat Iḥyā. No questions, comments? I will see all of you next week, inshallah. So I don't know if there was a mistake. I'm gonna stop this one. But before everybody leaves,